The first item, welcome everybody to the meeting. The first item is attendances, which should be all recorded electronically. I've had one apology from Councillor Churchill. Have we had any other apologies?
No, Chair, everybody else is here.
Okay. Item 2 is minutes of the meeting 21st of January 2021. Take it we've read them, and can we accept that as a true and correct record?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah. Right. Item 3, the main item of business for the meeting, is the COVID-19 licensing team service plan, extension of interim measures from the 1st of April 2021. So we've basically gone through a year of doing these interim arrangements in basically 3-month phases, and we've now sort of completed a year, and we're looking forward to the rest of this year. Bearing in mind, we all know when the lockdown the lockdown release dates are, but things aren't going to be getting back to normal that quickly. So I think we've got a couple of proposals on the medical form and the not issuing new licenses. So I take it, Joanne, are you going to speak to this?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
So the members may be aware, as just been stated, that we've been over the last several months asking the subcommittee to approve a number of temporary proposals to allow the delivery of the service during the current situation. So this report is a part of those ongoing interim measures. And we're seeking today approval for 2 further proposals. And the first relates to the council's requirement that all licensed drivers must at regular intervals provide a medical certificate. At its meeting on the 17th of December 2020, the subcommittee agreed to allow drivers who were unable to provide a medical certificate to complete an online self-certification, which we agreed would be valid until the 31st of March 2021. And then after this date, we would be requiring that they provide a certificate signed by their own doctor. But we did say we would review that nearer the time. So I think obviously this is the time to do it. Unfortunately, we're still having reports that it's anecdotal accounts that some drivers are still experiencing difficulty accessing their GP surgeries, or their GPs are refusing to do taxi driver medicals in the current situation. So it's still the view of officers that the best option is a medical report completed by the driver's own GP. However, we do recognise that this may not be possible in the current circumstances. So having reviewed the options available, what we're proposing is that we still require, in the first instance, that the driver get a medical from their GP if they can. If they're unable to do that, because, I don't know, the GP may be limiting face-to-face appointments, or, you know, is unable to undertake examinations at that time, we're proposing to continue to allow drivers to complete the online medical self-certification, and that would be valid up to the 30th of June 2021. So we're extending it again for another 3 months. Obviously, GP surgeries are still going to be busy in the next several months, and it may still be difficult for drivers to get medical certificates, in which case we're then kind of proposing a gradual return, hopefully, to the full medical from their own GP. But what we're going to start with is requiring that from the 1st of July, that we cease the self-certification scheme, and the driver must provide something more robust. So we are proposing that we require at least a medical completed by a private medical company who has seen a copy of a summary of the driver's medical history. Now, the driver will have to get that from their surgery, but they can take that to a private medical company, be interviewed by a doctor who will view the medical history and make a determination about their suitability. And what we're saying is that that would be acceptable up to the end of the year, so the 31st of December 2021, after which we would hope to return to our normal position of drivers being required to get a full medical from their own GP who has their full medical history. So that's the first proposal. The second relates to the decision of the subcommittee at the beginning of the pandemic to suspend all stages of the new driver application process. This was obviously because we couldn't safely facilitate the knowledge test or induction course because they're normally classroom based. We do continue to try and develop this remote solution, but we've been having a number of obstacles to progressing that. And until that's in place, and whilst we still have to comply with the social distancing rules, we're asking that the suspension of the new driver application process continue until at least the end of September 2021. So those are the two proposals in the report for your consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions members may have.
Okay, thank you, Joanne. So the new driver applications, we're going to review that before, well, presumably at the September meeting, are we?
Yes, yes. If I didn't say so before, yeah, we would review it again then. Hopefully, we'll have more progress either on an online solution, or if I'm honest, I think because it's all going to be dependent on us having a venue to host the tests. Because even if we're doing an online test, I think there still has to be an element of supervision. We can't unfortunately allow the drivers to be doing the test from home. So we still expect that there would still be that kind of classroom environment. And if we can't provide that, we might struggle to start the process again in September. But hopefully either the town hall will be able to facilitate that, or other venues will be opening up where we can actually host those kinds of events. So we'll review, yeah, the intention will be to review it in September.
Can I just ask a question, Chair, on this?
Yeah,
Sophie's asked in chat. I think we should stay with chat because we can go in order.
sorry. Yeah,
Oh,
sorry,
right, sorry.
I've not got right, Sophie.
Thanks, Joanne. Thank you very much for that report. Can I just ask, and I perhaps haven't got full insight to this, I'm just thinking about the remote solutions. What's been the sort of challenge with that, really? Because obviously, you know, we do manage a lot of remote. I do a lot of teaching remotely. I'm just wondering, you know, I can see it's difficult, but what do you think is difficult?
It has been the IT support, if I'm honest.
Right.
So obviously we've been liaising with the IT development team because we're going to be developing something from scratch, really. We've got tests written, we've got test papers written, and we've got an induction course which we produce, which we present. So it was just, I thought it would be a fairly simple process of actually converting that into some kind of online solution. But we've just been stymied by IT development. They've obviously had a lot of demands on their time, which I understand. So whenever we've engaged, they've obviously had other priorities, unfortunately. We also have been engaging with the safeguarding team because we wanted them to write this online induction course, including all these things around safeguarding. And again, they wanted to engage with us. They were experiencing IT problems in order to develop that side of things as well. So we've now started to think about, we've suggested looking at, you know, the staff training facility that we have. You know, when we have to do our annual training. Yeah. That's produced by whether we can use that as as a platform to
Yeah.
do. So that's what we've been asking. Can IT look into that, and safeguarding, can they look into that option? So that was the last communication we had with them.
Yeah.
So yeah, but still, as I say, I still think even if we had that facility, that would help us in terms of avoiding having to mark physical papers
Yeah.
and so on. So that would protect staff. But I do still think that there's this issue of supervision, and we would need rooms where people could sit and have access to computers to do it. And there isn't anywhere at the moment available. Even in our training rooms, there's a very limited number. I think you have like 10 computers, don't you, in one of the training rooms. So that would mean having to have sessions, running every hour, every day, just to get through the numbers of people who are waiting. So lots of factors to consider at the moment. So
yeah, no, I just thought I'd ask. I mean, it is difficult because in my day job, both in the National Health and in education, obviously we've had to take loads and loads of work online, and it is really, it is challenging, and you do need mega IT support to do, but it is possible to do, so no, I'd have thought that could have been something, but I first-hand experience, I know it is difficult, and the issue of supervision is hard as well, isn't it? Because you know that these people are genuinely who they say they are doing the work, don't you?
Yeah.
So no, just wondered.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd pursue with it because I think it could work, couldn't it?
It could, and I think it is our ambition that would be the way forward.
Yeah.
That we would have it online anyway, even though we would still have to have people come into wherever we're hosting it and sit at a desk and do it and be supervised. But everything would be marked automatically. Then we'd have all that in place.
Yeah. Yeah, no, thank you very much.
That's the ambition.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Dylan and then Michael, please.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, just a question around the medical. Can you just remind us how long the medical is valid for? Is it for the length of that license period that they're being given, or? So
our rule is that you have to have a medical when you first apply to us, and whatever age you are, you have to have a satisfactory medical, and from that date, every 5 years, you must have another one, and that's the case all the way up to when you reach 65. And at that age, we require you to have a medical every year, annually. So
65.
So every 5 years is the normal rule.
Yeah, and I take it there's not many over 65 that are licensed.
We don't have many. We don't have many. One or two. Yes, there are drivers who have to give it annual medicals, but a diminishing number of drivers after 65.
Because I do believe they're not cheap, these Andy medicals, are they?
They're not. And our proposal is we currently we only require a Group 1 medical, which is out of step with the rest of Greater Manchester. And the proposal is that drivers will have to provide a Group 2 medical if our new taxi licensing policy is approved.
Yeah.
Now that possibly is even more expensive because it's the medical that is done by lorry drivers and bus drivers. It's the DVLA Group 2 medical. So.
I suppose that'd be similar to like the ones that the pilots have, airline pilots, because they check the heartbeat, heart rates and the rhythms and everything.
Well, I don't know if I'd class a taxi driver like a pilot, but
no, but I mean they're still public transport.
And I'm not sure what the level is there, obviously, but the more obviously responsibility you have, the more stringent the test is. But Group 2 is the recognised test for road hauliers and
because I'm connected with aviation, you see, so I know a little bit about
it. Right. So are they required to do a Group 2 medical then?
Well, they have annual medicals and irrespective of age, and it's only up to age of 60. They
Right.
can't-
Well,
they-
we would still only be proposing every 5 years, so it's not.
Yeah.
But after 65, yeah, it's still an annual
But,
test.
and also the benefit of the pilot is that he's got a co-pilot next to him, so if anything, he's going to feel anything.
Mm.
Whereas the
Which
like
you
somebody-
wouldn't have with a driver. Yeah.
Classic incident when we had that bus driver who went straight into that building.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's one reason why, and obviously we put in place the self-certification system because at the time, people simply weren't able to go to their GPs. That has relaxed a little bit. Some GPs. I mean, it's not that we've got lots of drivers who can't get a medical. It's just that some practices are saying to drivers, we're not going to do them as a priority, or we're certainly not going to do them at this time. But it's been a year now, and we do think that we need to start looking at something a bit more robust than a self-certification.
Yeah.
And that possibly the next step is to at least for them to go and visit a doctor with them, summary of their medical history, and then we get something a bit more robust from that doctor. Never going to be as good as you're getting it from your own doctor. So obviously we still want to press for that, but we feel it's a bit. We've got this duty obviously to ensure that people are medically fit to be driving. So I think at some stage we're going to have to start asking. For more stricter checks.
Mhm.
Joanne,
Yeah,
do we
thank
know
you.
that that's happening now, that doctors are giving like a brief summary?
You can get one. You can get both a summary, which shouldn't take too long, a few days possibly, or we could ask for a full history, which could take several weeks to get from your practice. You can get them. You're entitled to. It is your medical
Even in the
record.
current climate with the COVID and everything.
Yeah, but what I think we would insist on is that, because we have been approached by a number of medical companies saying we can do this for you, and what I'd want is for them to say that they had seen the person and they'd seen a medical summary and confirmed that they were satisfied as to their suitability.
Joanne, can I ask, what do we do if somebody has a medical incident during the 5-year period? Are they presumably obliged to declare it if it's serious enough? Are there some rules about that? If somebody quite young could have some medical in the middle of his 5-year period.
One of the things that we have needed to change in our regulations our conditions is that they must notify us if they get a medical, if they do develop a medical condition. It's actually, I'm afraid to say, not a condition on the licence at the moment. So that is definitely going to change. Obviously, we would expect people to do that, but it's currently not an actual requirement on their conditions of licence. So they wouldn't be in breach of their conditions of licence. There would be other issues, but they wouldn't be in breach of that licence. So that does need to change.
Yeah, because obviously, if it's impinging on their livelihood, there'd be a temptation, wouldn't there, to
Yes,
not
exactly. Yes, of course. Yeah.
Will that change when we go to sort of one set of conditions for the whole of Greater Manchester?
So we've each got our own conditions, but they're very similar. There might be, we have a basic core set of conditions for each type of licence. And then if we want ours to be stricter, they can be. And so, yeah, they're all very similar at the core, and including these conditions like this, where we've agreed about medicals and DBSs and so on. But if we wanted to add something a bit more stricter around some condition, we can do. So we have that flexibility. But we all agree about the requirement for there to be a medical. We disagree on how often they should be, because some authorities don't require one until they're over, I think it's 45. So they have one when they get licensed, and then they don't need to do another one until they're 45. That's a position in some authorities, but obviously we don't want to change our rules, because ours are stricter, obviously.
Okay, thank you, Joanne. Michael, the doctor will see you now.
Hello. Yeah, just trying to think of vaguely creative solutions to this.
If you have any, I welcome them.
The testing issue. I mean, obviously, if people are on webcam and you can see them, then and you have photographic identity, then is that one way of making sure that it's not in the
We're talking about the test now, Councillor.
The test.
Yeah, I mean, that has been suggested. That they hold up, and they all will hold up their identification as well, their driving license or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, so that is a possibility that we could look at.
Alternatively, an interview style, test. I mean, I know that would be personnel resource intensive, but if some
it would, and the problem is we have 800 people in the in the various stages of the process that have been suspended at the moment. So it's a lot of drivers. That might be something for the future. When we've got over that hurdle of that large number of people who are waiting.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if, as you say, that the resources would allow us to be able to check as thorough as we'd like. And also we'd need to involve, I think, audit, because obviously audit would be concerned about us verifying people's identity and what is the best way to do that. So yeah, they're all up for consideration in my mind. If we want to aim for that online.
Are there any third-party companies, like you said, for the offering?
Yes, they are. We currently have a company that does our DBS checks for us, because we had to go before lockdown. We would do them. People would come in with all their documentation, and we would manually check them and then send off the applications to the DBS, and we couldn't do that obviously from lockdown. So we have a company that are doing the DBS checks for us, and they also do knowledge tests for other authorities. So that is another option, although obviously we've spent a lot of time developing our own knowledge test and induction course, and we would like to retain control of it. So I think these options all have to be considered as we move forward. So I haven't settled on one particular option right now.
Thank you.
Is that all right? Dan, you've got a question.
Well, yeah, one of them has just been partially covered, as I say, by the previous speaker, in terms of trying to alternatives to the testing regime. And whilst I think a lot of the learning should be fairly easily done online, I do agree that with doing a test online, you are making it rather easy if they do hold up their IDs to prove who they are, how much observation would then there would be of them actually completing the test. It'd be very easy for someone to be sort of sitting there with sort of a laptop looking things up and sort of passing them the information for them to complete it, even if they were on a video. If people just sort of someone sitting next to them, just passing it over at a fairly low level for them to take crib notes from continuously throughout the test or something like that. I would have thought it wouldn't have been too difficult though to get, say, an external site to go and do the test at, where they could sit far enough apart from each other, although how relevant that is now, given the fact we're about to end all the lockdown measurements in about 3 months' time. But if we wanted to make a start of them now, surely you could just hire a hall somewhere and have them sitting fairly widely spread apart.
Well, we did have a contract with UA92. That's where the tests were taking place prior to lockdown, the first lockdown. And they could host large numbers. So, at some points we were having 50 to 100 candidates in the classrooms, and obviously that's set up in a classroom environment, so it was perfect, for us to use. So the hope is, even if the town hall doesn't open, their meeting rooms and so on before September, perhaps the university will be.
Yeah. Can I ask why are we saying September? Because surely if all lockdown measures are to end on the 21st of June, which is what the government at least for the moment, is saying. Providing it doesn't change its mind as it has done multiple times previously, why are we waiting until September before we're able? Surely if we did.
Well, I was going to suggest that obviously that would be the latest, and if we can move to introducing something sooner, then you know, we propose to do that, and then I can let you know that that's it's been made possible to do that sooner than September. So if we can, I would want to, certainly if we've not got an online option and we're going back to the classroom environment and those classrooms are available, and we can be assured of, because we're still going to have social distancing rules in place for some time, I think.
Well,
I think we agree that that's going to be a while, but
I would hope that would be as limited a time as possible if the government's saying all lockdown measures are trend on the. I know there seems to be this trend to, oh yes, well, everything, all the science says we're fine now, but let's just, for the sheer hell of it, continue them on. I think some people are enjoying them far too much. If you ask my opinion on that, that is enjoying telling people what they must and must not do far too much. The other argument I would just want to raise with you, but I appreciate that, you know, in terms of the medical test, and you said, yeah, oh, it's so much better to get their own GP to do it. I'm not entirely certain I agree with you over that. My GP, I haven't seen my GP, him or her, whoever the hell it is, for years. I know which medical centre I'm registered with, but I couldn't even remember the name of my own doctor. And so my doctor, if I did go and see him, if I was a taxi driver, if we imagine that for a moment, and I was going to go and see my doctor, it would be no better than seeing anybody who'd been given a potted history of my medical, my medical details, because my doctor has no relationship with me whatsoever now, unless you're ill and seeing them on a regular basis, which I imagine with taxi drivers is probably not going to be the case. Otherwise, yeah, if they were had chronic conditions and were constantly seeing their doctor all the time, well, they're probably not going to be taxi drivers if they're in a medical bind, at least most of the time anyway. Surely just a doctor who's seen your potted history is probably just as good as your own GP. In my case, it would be exactly the same thing, because my GP, even though I might be technically their patient, I haven't seen him in years. Can't even remember what their name is.
They've got all your medical records.
Yeah, but any doctor who's seen your medical records is going to be just, even you could argue, if we were going to go as a halfway house, any GP from your practice where you're registered is just because they'll have all your medical records. I mean, my GP, and these days medical records can be floated about fairly easily via an email. If a doctor was going to carry out a medical for you, all he'd have to do is email your practice and say, I am due to have a medical exam of this person for a taxi license. Can you please provide me? And they'll be able to float them over. So
you have to get your surgery to do that, wouldn't you? So,
well, surely in this day and age, that's not that difficult.
It shouldn't be an issue. I think it's more of an issue between you and your surgery.
Well, we're perhaps assuming that, oh yes, Dr. Smith will recognise Joe Soap, who's going to be, because he'll have some ongoing relationship with him. These days, often there's not. People don't get to see their doctors that often. I haven't seen mine in years and don't even know what his name is. So I have zero.
I'm assuming that's because there is no issue. You have no issue, medical issue
in the majority
at the moment.
of cases with taxi
Long may
drivers,
that continue, Dan. Long may that continue.
Oh, I'm sure you believe that. I'm sure you. Yes, I'm sure that all the councillors on this council would hate the very idea of me being struck down with the lurgy tomorrow. I'm sure you'd probably be a celebration if that happened. But
I'm sure if you were, your doctors would be all over you, Dan.
Well, whoever my doctor is,
it's a distance.
The point is, as long as they've had a copy of the medical records, which they will be able to confirm, that'll be first tick in the form. Have you seen the medical records? Yes, tick. If they say no, well, then you'd have to reject. As long as they've seen the medical records, it doesn't really matter what doctor it is. One GP is probably pretty much as good as another. in that circumstance, and that would at least speed things up. As long as they've seen the medical records, be they the GP themselves, be they another GP at the same surgery who's gone and got them from, or another GP wherever who's just had them sent to him. It doesn't really matter, as long as they've seen them before they do the test, and just tick the box in the form to say yes, I've seen them.
Yeah, it's not a problem with the system. I mean, I'm sure they're all overworked, especially at the moment with the COVID. You know.
Well, this would
Because
ease
my
that
response
problem.
would be that I agree in many cases that would be enough in terms of verifying that that person was medically fit. But there are going to be occasions, and we've had them before the committee, where we've had a doctor say, well, I'm not prepared to say on the form that they're not medically fit, but I have a concern about this driver's drinking because I've seen him on a number of occasions and he has a drinking problem. We've had that before the committee in the past.
I remember the case you're referring to, and I remember disagreeing.
And then there are other issues where, that it all depends a lot of the time on what's recorded on that driver's record. Not everything may be coded, on their medical record properly. And a doctor that does have a relationship with a patient who they see regularly because they have certain medical conditions might know whether somebody has been diagnosed with a condition, they've been diagnosed medication, and they're not taking that medication, for instance. That might not be coded on somebody's record. So I think there is value in having the input from the doctor, a doctor that has seen that driver. And we will accept medical from a practice, not just that one. But I go to a practice and I might not see it the same doctor every time I go, but all my records are there and can be accessed by surgery, and we kind of would accept that.
Well, that's totally arguing against yourself there, because if I'm a locum at a GP surgery, I'm just going to be going off the medical records. Now, if the regular GP who's on holiday hasn't recorded it all down in the notes, the fact that he knows about it and the fact that I'm sitting in the same building, it makes no difference. It could be a doctor across town. If they haven't written it down in the medical records and it's not the actual GP who knows all about this person, who remembers all about this person, but hasn't bothered to write any of it in their medical record because he simply carries it around all in his head, well, then if I'm a locum at the same practice covering him while he's on holiday, well, then it'd be in exactly the same situation.
That's just human error. It could happen anywhere. It's not a fault.
Well, then surely doctors should be recording the records correctly. And if they're not, well, if they had not happened to be there,
Right, let's move it on. Simon Thomas, you have a question?
Yeah, certainly. On the doctor's access, anyone that's got access to the NHS mainframe as a doctor can access through your own NHS number, and they can see the records. And most doctors nowadays do complete and comply with the record keeping.
Well, that's the point.
I do say that, but private doctors don't, for that matter. You would have to get, you'd have to give permission for them to access. My question is, obviously we're looking at till September. Now, two parts to it. If the lockdown or the roadmap is successful in what it wants to achieve by the 21st of June, can we look at it and shorten that period? But also, there is no guarantee, and the Prime Minister has said this himself, that the 21st of June is the supposed holy grail for the removal of any distancing or lockdown measures. Obviously, it all depends on what happens going forward over the next couple of months. So I think the September idea is a good idea, but I just do wonder that if by following the roadmap and things pan out the way that they're supposed to pan out, that if we can bring it forward. Obviously, there is also the flip side where we may have to extend it. Can we bring it forward?
As I responded to Councillor Bunting earlier, I think that there is that option. Yes, I mean, that would be, we could review it at any time up to September. Obviously, our ambition is to try and restart the testing as soon as we can, safely. So I think if there is an option to start those tests again sooner, then I would propose to come back to you and say, can we start sooner than that? We may even say, as an emergency kind of decision, we can obviously approach the chair and say, we can start from that date, but it's sooner than the next committee meeting. Is that okay? And then we can report back to committee that we've actually started the tests sooner than we anticipated.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would not, you know, this decision today wouldn't stop officers from still pursuing starting the tests at, you know, an earlier date if we can.
In that case, then I would propose that we support the item in front of us.
Happy to
Could
second
I make
that.
a suggestion based on a combination of Councillor Thomas's argument and my own? If we are going to restart earlier if possible, and we're going to need a period of time post lockdown completing of however many weeks in order to put various measures in place to start again, could you not remove a date and simply say post whatever the lockdown ends, whether if say it is the 21st of June, X weeks post that, and that way if it were to be pushed back, take longer, then you would have automatically longer without the need to come back to anyone, because it would say lockdown plus so many weeks. Or if it were brought forward, then the same would apply. In other words, you know, if they brought it to the beginning of June for argument's sake, then you'd say, well, okay, you required 2-3 weeks, whatever it is, to get yourself back up to get things in place. So whatever lockdown is plus X days, and that's when you'd start from, and that would avoid the need for you to come back at all, because it will be a floating date that would give you the flexibility you need.
I just think it's simpler to actually have a date by which we would review things. I just find that it may complicate things if we're, you know, that idea. I mean, that's the reason we put a date is because legal say we can't just have an open-ended.
And you wouldn't with this situation.
Decision.
You'd have a date, but it would avoid your need to come back to mitigate it, or you'll need to go to the chairman or whatever it would be, because that would simply say, okay, you require, once lockdown finishes, you need 2 weeks to get yourself to do the necessary work required to put yourselves in a position to go ahead and do that. So, okay, if you say lockdown plus 2 weeks, say it is June 21st, well, okay, 2 weeks from June 21st, you start. If it's delayed to August 21st, well, okay, fine, no problem. Two weeks from that day is when it would, or if it came forward, it would make it easier. It wouldn't be that complicated at all to be saying lockdown ends plus X days. That would be fairly clear and straightforward.
I think we need
It'd have to depend what lockdown meant, you know, because it might be that we come out, as I say to you, it might be that we come out of, you know, the idea is 21st of June, but we don't know at that stage whether or not there would still be requirements around social distancing.
No, they've said end of all lockdown measures. That's not, well, let's all start wearing face masks and let's all, that is what they're said, what they've taken. I'm taking the government at their word. They have said end of lockdown measures. That means the end of lockdown measures, not the partial end.
I think we need
partial
to,
dates. The partial dates are those dates they've given before then.
I think we need to allow it to bed in. I mean, we'll be having a meeting before the end of September, 3 week, third week of September. We can review it then to obviously see how we go forward. You know, so I think we need to see how it goes. I mean, nothing's going to happen over summer anyway, really, because people will be going on holiday. I mean, I don't even know whether
hopefully
you're having a regular meeting.
Well, possibly. It depends if Manhattan got Lexi ideal or not.
Well, I know it's data, not dates, but as we keep being told. But I think we need a target date. We'll aim for that date, and we'll see it. We'll see how it goes on that date. I think we do need to address with the officers how we address the backlog really going forward, because there's obviously going to be a huge backlog of applicants, and I think that's another discussion really between the officers and the politicians, really, how we address that. But I think it's fair enough that we have a target date. Summer will go past in a flash, as it always does, and I think as long as we know that we're going to review it at the end of September, then I think that'll give us time for everything to bed in, and we can look at the data and see how it goes, and not rush into, you know, being held to making a decision.
Yeah, I agree, Dave. I mean, although Councillor Bunting's idea is perhaps in a utopian, that's how we come out of lockdown, that would be a good idea. It is flexible. We're being told at every press conference virtually how flexible it is. So we don't, as Joanne says, we don't know how we're going to come out of lockdown. There could be measures from June the 21st, although we may be allowed to go on holiday or go to the pub or eat in a restaurant or whatever we may want to do. We don't know, and that's why I think that as it stands, I propose that we support that, and we take it as it comes. And if there's need for extra dialogue, then that should come as and when it's available.
So is that a proposal that
That's a proposal.
Recommendations.
Accept it, yeah.
I'll second that.
Yeah.
Are we happy to vote on it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. How do we do this? Just raise a hand on camera.
Generally go round it, or I'm happy to raise a hand.
I mean, if we need to, we'll do it virtually, but okay.
Yeah, I'm prepared to support it with a substantial degree of reluctance. I do think we are getting a degree of mission creep coming in here.
Okay, that's noted. All right, we'll agree that the recommendations in the report. Okay, so any urgent business in the open section?
No, Chair.
Can I move the exclusion resolution?
Move it, Chairman.
Seconded.
Any urgent business in the closed section?
No,
Still
Chair.
recording.
Okay, well, in that case, I'll officially close the meeting and thank everybody for their attendance.